What's up everybody? At long last, BlizzConline is almost upon us. So in this video, I'm going to be running through all my predictions and expectations for new Overwatch and Overwatch 2 related content we could end up seeing announced and revealed at this event. Anything from new heroes to new maps and even an animated short are realistic possibilities we could end up seeing. So today I'm going to discuss what I think is most likely to end up getting announced, and also hopefully manage some expectations for the things that don't seem quite as likely. This is Master EN Gamer. As always, be sure to subscribe and hit up that bell icon if you enjoy this video so you never miss out on any of my future Overwatch news and content. But now, let's discuss what sort of new Overwatch announcements we could be seeing at BlizzConline. So before I delve into my predictions, I first want to mention that if you're unfamiliar with what BlizzConline actually is, it's the online version of Blizzard's annual BlizzCon event, which normally takes place in the month of November, and is basically the time where they show off all their major announcements for the year. Overwatch 2 was first officially announced back at BlizzCon 2019, and we were expecting to hear more about this game at BlizzCon 2020. However, due to the global pandemic, BlizzCon 2020 was cancelled, and instead Blizzard decided to do a smaller online event, which they're calling BlizzConline. And that, of course, is the event coming up on February 19th and 20th, and while we do know it's going to be a smaller online event compared to the typical BlizzCons we see, we do know that there are going to be a number of big announcements for Blizzard's different titles, including new information about Overwatch and Overwatch 2. Now, before I delve into my actual expectations though, I do want to mention again that Blizzard has recently confirmed that Overwatch 2 will not be launching until at least 2022. I already made a video talking about that and giving my thoughts on that announcement specifically, but I just wanted to mention it again here in case you had missed it, because it's an important thing to consider when trying to figure out what sort of announcements Blizzard is going to make regarding Overwatch and its sequel at the upcoming BlizzConline. So jumping into my actual expectations now, first I want to consider some announcements they could make regarding Overwatch 1. And the first of these things, which I consider to be very likely to get announced, is a new hero. Now, I've talked about this quite a bit on my channel over the past couple months. If you've been following me at all, then you've likely seen at least one of my videos talking about the Kanazaka Fox Girl, who I do believe will be the new hero we get announced at BlizzConline. While it's true that about a year ago, Jeff Kaplan did go on record saying that Echo would be the last hero released prior to Overwatch 2, I think it's safe to say that a lot of things on the development side of Overwatch 2 have changed over the past year, namely due to the pandemic, so there's a very realistic chance that Jeff and Blizzard as a whole would have gone back on that statement to consider giving Overwatch 1 a bit more content to help hold us over until the eventual release of the sequel. And based on all the teasers we've gotten for the Kanazaka Fox Girl so far, which again I've covered in extensive detail on my channel, be sure to check out some of those videos of mine if you haven't already, it seems very likely that the new hero they would end up announcing is this character. And with BlizzConline being the biggest event of the year for Blizzard in terms of announcing new content, it would make sense for them to announce the new hero at BlizzConline. Therefore, I'd go so far as to say that if there's one thing we can for sure expect from this upcoming event, it is going to be the announcement of a new hero. Now, in addition to a new hero, there are some other things we could end up seeing still for Overwatch 1 prior to the release of Overwatch 2. And namely, the second most likely thing for us to see when it comes to Overwatch 1 would be a new map. While it's true that we just recently got the new map Kanazaka, this map is exclusively a deathmatch map, and thus isn't part of the standard quick play and competitive map rotations. Therefore, I think there's still at least a reasonable chance that we still see a standard game mode map released sometime over the course of 2021. And if that new map is going to end up releasing within the next few months, then they're most likely going to announce it now at BlizzConline. This is something Blizzard used to do pretty regularly back in the early years of Overwatch, where BlizzCon would be the time where they announced both a new hero and a new map. The new hero would usually release immediately following BlizzCon, and the new map would release about a month or two later. Therefore, if we do end up seeing some kind of new map released in, say, the next 6 months, I think it's very likely that Blizzard will at least mention a new map is coming at BlizzConline. But the next major thing for Overwatch 1 we could end up seeing at BlizzConline would be a new animated short. Now, so far, every single BlizzCon event since the launch of Overwatch, we've gotten a new Overwatch animated short. Sometimes it ties directly into the new hero they release at that same time, at other times it's been independent and told a different story. But the fact that we've gotten one at every single event so far makes me think there is a very good chance for us to get an animated short once again for BlizzConline. Also, from the development side, we know that it takes a very, very long time to make these animated shorts. Typically, they start working on these at least a year ahead of time, which means that they had probably already started work on the animated short they were planning to show off at BlizzCon 2020 prior to the pandemic and the whole shutdown, which interrupted their typical schedule, so I could easily see them having continued development of the animated short throughout the pandemic, since it's a project they had already started, and thus it would make sense for them to have it ready for BlizzConline, especially since BlizzConline is 3 months later than when BlizzCon 2020 was originally intended to take place. In fact, the only scenario in which I could see them not showing off a new animated short at BlizzConline is if the short they were working on was intended to somehow tie into Overwatch 2, but with Overwatch 2 development having almost certainly been delayed, that could introduce an issue where whatever sort of reveals they were planning to make in this new animated short might not end up coinciding with what they actually announce about the sequel at BlizzConline, in which case they would probably just postpone the animated short so that it wouldn't feel so disconnected with the other announcements they do end up making. But overall, I do still think it's very likely that we end up getting another animated short, especially since it's a really easy thing for them to show off through an online event like this. It doesn't require any sort of special panel or in-person conference or anything like that. It's literally just a video they can show on the stream and then immediately have uploaded to their YouTube channel. So overall, I would say an animated short is a very likely thing for us to end up seeing. Now, moving on though to Overwatch 2 specifically, I want to mention that while it has been confirmed that Blizzard will be talking about the sequel at BlizzConline, I first and foremost want to sort of rein in people's expectations. Given that we now know Overwatch 2 will not be releasing in the next 10.5 months, I'm willing to bet that whatever sort of announcements and reveals they do make for Overwatch 2 at BlizzConline are probably gonna be on the minimal side. Blizzard as a company does not like talking about their projects and content way too far ahead of time, so if we're looking at close to another year before we end up getting the actual game itself, I'm willing to say that there's not going to be a whole ton they actually say about it at BlizzConline. However, one thing I do think we could very easily see announced relating to Overwatch 2 is more hero designs. Back at BlizzCon 2019, Blizzard showed off a number of Overwatch 2 designs for existing Overwatch heroes, which are basically just part of Blizzard's effort to help freshen up the look of Overwatch 2 and make it stand out as a new and separate game from Overwatch 1. And since BlizzCon 2019, Blizzard has teased the idea of them having developed different looks for other heroes which haven't actually been shown off to us yet, so BlizzConline seems like the perfect opportunity for Blizzard to show off more of those hero designs. Like the animated short, this would be a really easy thing for them to showcase. It would help give us more content to get excited for relating to the sequel, without necessarily forcing Blizzard to commit to anything as substantial as like a new gameplay mode or new hero abilities for new heroes. So overall, new hero designs seem to be a very likely thing for us to end up seeing. In a similar vein, we could also end up seeing new talents for certain heroes. Like hero designs, back at BlizzCon 2019, Blizzard showed off a number of different talents, as well as a talent tree system, which we now know was actually more of a prototype layout for what the talent system was going to look like. It sounds like the actual talent system is likely going to end up being far more extensive and in-depth, but that doesn't mean that Blizzard couldn't just show off at the very least some of the different talents they're working on, as again, that'd be an easy thing for them to show off without risking revealing too much of the major content that's going to be releasing with the sequel. So overall, them showing us new talents isn't probably as likely as us getting the new hero designs, but it is something I could still easily see them showing off. But speaking about talents for existing heroes, what about new heroes and maps for Overwatch 2. Again, back at BlizzCon 2019, we saw a number of new maps that are going to release with the sequel, in addition to Sojourn, who was confirmed to be one of the heroes releasing with Overwatch 2. So could we end up seeing even more Overwatch 2 maps and heroes announced this year at BlizzConline? Well, despite how exciting this type of content is when it comes to new announcements for Overwatch, I actually consider maps and heroes for Overwatch 2 being some of the least likely things we could end up seeing. The main reason for this is I don't think Blizzard is going to want to get us too hyped and excited for a new hero or a new map when we, again, still have a year to wait until they actually release. And especially if Blizzard ends up releasing a new Overwatch 1 hero at BlizzConline. I feel like it would just create a lot of hype overlap if they announced multiple new heroes, but then only one of them was actually for Overwatch 1, and the rest we're going to have to wait a whole year for. So therefore, when it comes to Overwatch 2 heroes, I don't really expect us to see anything new in this regard. I think we could possibly see a bit more of Sojourn specifically, since she's already been confirmed to be a new hero for the sequel. But beyond that, I don't really expect them to be showing us Junker Queen or Mauga or confirming any characters like that and saying, hey, this is a new hero coming for the sequel, but that's still a year away. Come look at this cool Fox Girl character for the time being. It would risk playing out like what happened to Ashe back at BlizzCon 2018, where the animated short showed off both Ashe and Echo, and then you ended up having a bunch of people who are just excited for Echo and sort of just overlooked the fact that Ashe was being added to the game. So I'm hesitant to say they would end up doing something like that again. When it comes to Overwatch 2 maps, though, I think new maps might be a bit more likely, just based off of how many of them they showed us back at BlizzCon 2019, on top of the fact that they confirmed there will be a ton of new maps releasing with the sequel. I wouldn't be too surprised if they did end up showing us, you know, just a few more locations, maybe just ones they're sort of prototyping, or maybe just concept artwork for different ideas, that sort of thing. So when it comes to Overwatch 2 new maps, maybe it could happen. Overwatch 2 new heroes, very unlikely in my opinion. I know it's disappointing because everybody always gets the most excited for the new heroes, but I just can't see Blizzard making that many big announcements this far ahead of the game's actual release. I mean, the only reason they ever even showed us Sojourn back in 2019 was to just tease the idea of there being new heroes added with the sequel. So I certainly don't expect them to be showing us a ton of new heroes this far in advance. And speaking of Overwatch 2's release, how about an Overwatch 2 release date? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say that a specific release date is quite possibly the least likely thing for them to give us. Again, I know that's going to be very disappointing if we go another BlizzCon and we still don't get any specific information on when the game's going to release, but just considering how much time we know is left prior to it actually launching, I feel like any sort of announcement Blizzard would give, like even if they said Overwatch 2 will launch January 1st, 2022, I just can't imagine that having a positive effect on the community, simply due to how far off that date would end up being. Maybe they could give us a release window, like saying, oh, we're currently planning for Q1 2022, which would probably be the most idealistic scenario for them to go with. But even then, I'm just not convinced Blizzard themselves have that specific of a release date in mind. I think they're still in the stage with the game where they're focusing very hard on just getting the development done, and aren't worrying nearly as much about when that development gets done. Of course, they want to get it done as soon as possible, but I just can't imagine they'd be comfortable announcing a release date for it this far in advance. And in a similar vein, I've seen a lot of people talk about the possibility of an Overwatch 2 beta announcement at BlizzConline. This one I think is a bit more likely, but still I wouldn't super duper get your hopes up for it. I think it's possible that Blizzard would say something like, oh, Q4 2021, we're planning to have a beta for the game. But just like with the game's full-on release date, I just don't think Blizzard is really that far along in knowing when they're going to have it finished to the point that they would actually announce a beta at this point. I could be wrong, but just from the information we've had sort of revealed to us and just the context of how the devs have really talked about Overwatch 2 up to this point, I'm not really keeping my fingers crossed for a beta. It's possible we hear something about a beta, but I wouldn't recommend getting your hopes up for it. But moving on again to a possibly more likely reveal they could end up giving us, new information about PVE content. Now, this is a very broad prediction, as saying new PVE content can mean a number of different things. Technically, you could classify the talents, which I already talked about, as being part of the PVE content, but what I'm thinking about more specifically here is things like enemy PVE units, so showing us some of the new enemies we might end up facing in the PVE matches, which could even include new factions, such as the Hashimoto clan we learned about in the Kanazaka teasers we got not that long ago, but also just some of the mechanics of the PVE modes in general. Maybe they'll show us a sort of map layout for how you select specific missions, or maybe they'll have some sort of sample cutscene of what it's like to actually go into a mission and select which heroes you play as, or who knows, any other sort of PVE related content. Again, this is a very broad topic and it would depend a lot on what exactly they want to show off, but I do think there is a fairly good chance, at least, of them showing us something new related to the PvE. Be that new enemies you play against, new items you can find in the PvE missions themselves, or just something related to the structure of the missions and how the PvE system actually works. And the last major prediction I'd like to talk about is Overwatch going free to play. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about this in the community recently, but I have to admit I don't think we're actually going to end up seeing any free to play announcements being made at BlizzConline. The reason for this is if Blizzard did switch Overwatch over to a free to play model, it would make the most sense for them to make the switch when Overwatch 2 actually releases. That would give them the best opportunity to reconfigure the game's monetization systems in order to accommodate for all the free-to-play players, while still having whatever sort of paid cosmetics or whatever they end up doing to sort of compensate for that. Of course, there's already loot boxes and paid cosmetics in Overwatch as is, but if they were to make the big step of going free-to-play for presumably the PvP portion of the game, then there'd be a lot of internal things that would have to adjust in order to make that work. Therefore, I don't expect the existing Overwatch 1 to spontaneously go free-to-play at BlizzConline, and I certainly don't expect them to announce this far ahead of time that Overwatch 2 will be free-to-play, since that would basically just discourage potential buyers from buying Overwatch 1 over the year leading up to the sequel. If they said, hey, wait 10.5 months and then you can play Overwatch for free, they're potentially turning away a ton of paying customers who would have bought the game over the course of 2021, but wouldn't since they'd learned that, oh, it's going to be free to play if I just wait a year. So yeah, free to play I do think is a possibility for Overwatch 2 in the long run when we're talking about the game actually releasing, but for now I don't expect us to get an announcement about Overwatch 2 being free to play or Overwatch 1 going free to play at this point in time. I will admit that it's possible, it just seems rather unlikely to me. But that wraps up all my predictions for Overwatch and Overwatch 2 at BlizzConline. As you can see here, this is just a simple ranking of all the different possible things we could end up seeing and how likely I consider them to be. The number one things we should be looking out for are the announcement and reveal of a new hero, which I expect to be coming out pretty soon after the event, in addition to likely some hero designs and maybe talents when it comes to Overwatch 2. Beyond those, there's some other possibilities we end up seeing, but overall I think BlizzConline is going to be noticeably smaller in terms of content announcements than what we typically see at BlizzCon events. So I really just want to manage everyone's expectations. Don't get super excited for this huge announcement or some massive reveal relating to the sequel, because in all honesty, it's probably just not gonna happen. It's a rough time for Overwatch right now, with really not a whole ton going on, but let's just hope for the best and hope that Blizzard is working hard on Overwatch 2, and once we finally do get the sequel, it's gonna be a great game. But with that, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on what you expect to see at the upcoming BlizzConline by dropping a comment down below. As always, be sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, hit up that bell icon, and come join my Discord server to hang out and never miss any of my future Overwatch content. Special thanks to my YouTube channel members who help make these videos possible, and if you'd like to join them to support my channel and earn some cool rewards like your name at the end of my videos, then just hit that join button down below. Otherwise, this is Master EN Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.